that your new cookbook, Mandy?
Oh, Brian.
Okay, we'll click on Tom. Hello, Tom.
Hey, guys. Hey, everybody. Are we live?
Yeah, I think we're having too much fun here.
And
Right. Good. Well, welcome, everybody. We have on our call today, we have Mandy Snell, we have Jennifer Evans, sorry, Jennifer. We have Barry Jakowski, and we have Bo Snell. So thanks for joining us, team members. And we are going to be talking today about, we're continuing our discussions, basically our private lending checklist. And we're in the project section, vetting the project. Let's see, maybe should we just run a couple of quick announcements here first? We are having our A-team meeting this next Saturday at Hobie's Restaurant in Belmont, if anybody's in the area. I know we have a couple of guests coming in from out of town. We have Dave and we have Chan coming in, so welcome, guys, and hopefully we have a good show up. Yeah, a lot of people there. There we go.
We're only charging you admission, Tom.
All right. Okay.
Everyone else is free.
Okay. Good. So Barry, do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, you know what we're working on right now, the A-team is sort of catching on with a lot of Platinum members, and we're working on right now a handbook for any of those who might want to try and set up an A-team in the area of the country that they're in. Hopefully in a couple of weeks, if not sooner, we'll have a handbook, and we'd like to try our best to assist anyone in setting up these groups. And you know, we can attest to the fact that they've been incredibly valuable. And I know there's one in Southern California, and I'm not sure. I think there's one other that I've heard about, but I've heard a number of people talk to me at the Platinum event that they would really like to set one up. So we're working on a sort of best practices for the A-team, what's really worked for us, and we'll have that available. We'll announce it as soon as we have it.
And that is open only to Platinum members, or
only Platinum members, right?
Apprentices, but yeah. So I agree, Barry. There's been just a lot of really good feedback about the meeting that we've had, and I think people get a lot of value out of that. So certainly let us know if we can share any information for anybody out there that might want to start their own chapter.
And I wanted to just quickly give Steve Gilsdorf a plug also, because
absolutely. Yep.
The two of you have been really instrumental in setting that up and making that work. So, Steve, if you're listening, thank you.
Yes, thanks for all the hard work and coordination. Absolutely. Great. And then, Jennifer, did you want to share a little bit about any updates with the GCA Reach Out program?
Well, we are continuing to work on the website. Just about every week I'm adding a little bit more docs that we're posting in the resources section, and trying to make sure that all of the events have the right dates on them and such. So we're tweaking it here and there, and just, you know, everybody keeps sending in your suggestions and your ideas about what you want to see this grow into. Just like anything else in the community, it's driven by the needs of the community. So just keep sending in your suggestions, and we'll try to do what we can to make it happen.
Great. Thank you.
Could I just jump in one other thing? You know, what made our hangout the last time really great was the participation of everyone that that was sending us in questions
on this call right now. Yes,
on this, right, exactly. And there is depending on your screen. On my screen, for example, it's on the left side. If you sort of move your cursor over, a little something comes out with a bunch of different icons on it, but look for it on your screen. You might have to click around until you find it, and you'll see something that says Q&A. And you can actually communicate with us. I'll read your questions, and this way you can be a real part of the conversation. It really makes it so much more interesting for all of us. And so we invite you. Thanks, Jay. Jay said he can hear us fine, and Steve said you're welcome. Good to see that there are at least 2 people out there in cyberspace.
That's good. That's
so
good.
let us know. Send us some messages, and we'll include you in the conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, and over the next few weeks and probably here on out, I think what we're going to do is maybe Jennifer, if you have a chance, we'll start calling some people and ask them if they're willing to join in on this portion as being a video guest, so that we can have the video portion even more interactive as well. So
right.
if you get a phone call, and by all means, if anybody would like to volunteer for that, we'd love to have that too. So please
Yes.
stay in contact with Jennifer, or beware, she might just be calling you.
We'll volunteer you if you want volunteer yourself.
Right, right. And Mandy or Bo, did you have anything to start out with, or should we start into our PowerPoint?
No, well, only that, anybody that can make it to the A team in the Bay Area, on a monthly basis. So it's second Saturday of the month now. It is so beneficial for everybody there, and it's a great way for everybody to network as well, other than, waiting for the every 4 months for the meeting. So it's a great group of people. There's a tremendous amount of experience within that community. So, just coming and just rubbing shoulders with a lot of people that have been in Bankers Code for, several years, I think there's just a lot to glean from. So I would encourage, get on a plane and come out and see what we do.
And it's at 1101 Shoreway Road in Belmont, California. And you could contact any of us or Jennifer, and to get the address if you need it.
And this month we happen to have Rod Butters, an attorney who spoke at one of our last 18 meetings, and he was it went really well, and he's volunteered to fly back in from Las Vegas, where his office is, and he's going to be talking about QRPs, and he will also answer any and all questions that he can relating to anything that we're doing in the private lending business. So if you're looking for advice from a very, very seasoned attorney in real estate and structuring, he will be the guest speaker at both the A-Team Hangout and the Meetup this month. So with that, sorry for the long plug here, but I think it's really worthwhile to consider those couple of events. So.
Just want to say thanks to Homa and Wallace. I'm not quite sure of your question, but he's asking, who am I? What are you doing here? I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. I think you're joking around with us, so that is great. But I know who you are and where you live. So we all do, so be careful. Anyway, great to see you, Wallace. Or not see you, to see your handwriting on the wall, so to speak. Anyway, sorry, Tom.
Okay, so with that, our next slide, the slide that we left off on, or that we were ready to jump onto basically, was betting the project, and it was a 30-day quick sale price. Maybe, Bo, would you like to start out by sharing your thoughts on that particular item?
Yeah, Mandy and I we're talking about quick sale. So if you're, I guess, the seller of a property or you're the lender, it could mean 2 different things. So I think, we get appraisals and BPOs on properties, but triangulating that into 3 different opinions is always the best way to go. But I think borrowers try to push the limit, and they're always optimistic about it. We're going into the spring and prices are going to go up. So what we don't want to do is lenders get caught using the high price, hoping on our profit, which is really just speculation. So if anything, you want to be, a few percent, 2 to 5% below the market. 5% would be good. 10% would be better. So if it works with those numbers, then you do have potentially a good deal. So the deals only get typically worse. They don't get better, unless real estate's really appreciating and you get caught in that kind of bubble. But I don't think we can bank on that anymore. So
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. It is really amazing, Bo. You and I just got off of a call here just a little bit ago with what I would get, what seems to me to be an over-optimistic borrower. We are going to go to the next step with him, but really the excitement and the energy of a new deal is always it's pretty easy to be excited about a project that hasn't had any problems with it yet. And you tend to see the upside and everything, but really, if the market goes down just a bit, if there's a little bit more on the construction budget, if there's a little bit more, if it takes a bit longer, if there's not enough of a profit margin or enough of a net profit in the project before you start that you can afford to lose a couple of points on it, it just makes it really really tough in the end. One of the things that we look for, even at that 30-day quick sale price, is to make sure that that net profit is strong enough. And I've said it before, where our criteria is we want to see at least 11% net profit after the real estate agent is even paid out of that. So that is our target, because if the market goes down just a couple of ticks, it can really affect what's going on. And so really be careful that we're not caught in the optimistic borrower cycle, and that we're really taking the time to verify. And really, the 30-day quick sale, you can ask the broker or the appraiser for a 30-day or a 60-day or a 90-day. It's always going to be a bit of a I'd hate to say guess, but it's going to be, for anybody out there, it's going to be a bit of a guess, really, to try and nail the exact sale price. But if you're asking for BPOs and you're asking for appraisals, really, I think it's important to at least ask for 60-day or 30-day would be ideal when they're giving the BPO or the appraisal.
It's interesting, Tom. I just got off the phone just like about an hour ago with a broker for one of our deals, and that is one of the questions I always ask. In other words, if you get a BPO, the appraisal will usually come in at a number, but the BPOs will be a range. I'll always ask. I'll always interview the BPO agent and ask them, what would you list this at, and then also what would you list it at for a quick sale? Mm-hmm. And I think it's a number that it's really important to understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This next one, thank you, Barry. This next one, Bo, if you wouldn't mind sharing, you and I had a discussion maybe about a month ago on a project down in southeast United States, and you had done some poking around on the project, and you saw some items in the picture that we really wouldn't have seen if you hadn't taken the time to do that, which we always do. Can you just share what you had? I thought, it was an interesting conversation that we had, which is so true about influence and how to be really cautious of what order and by whom the appraisal is brought in. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm actually trying to think, to be honest with you.
It was a small house down in Louisiana.
Right. It was new construction, though, right?
Yes.
Right. So.
But there were some things that you brought up about that and about the order and different things.
Yeah. The appraisal and the value.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So when you go on Google Earth and you start looking around areas and you start kind of dissecting streets, and people are trying to buy on the fringe and use comps that are, may only be 3-4 streets over, but those streets are much nicer streets. And when you've got duplexes and really old, literally the house next door had 5 doors with stoops in front of them. Mm-hmm. Which was going to end up next to a brand new house. And
Yeah.
You just have to question, am I going to get the same price on this street that they're going to get 5 streets over? Now,
Right, and so the pictures I think were really telling, but also your comments about the if I think you stated, and I think we talked about this one time, 15-20% variance, depending on, I mean, an appraiser, anybody can really be steered a bit one way or the other.
right.
So the importance of going at it from a neutral position rather than from a subtly.
Yeah, the point that I made, I think, was that the who influenced that appraiser to get that price, because I think it came in like $25,000 more than even the borrower had suggested the value was, and that number was being pushed up from a number that we'd seen prior to even that number.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my question to you was, I mean, if we had a chance, in that case we weren't, we were working with somebody else, so the appraisal was ordered by somebody else, but we would want the chance to make that appraiser aware of the condition of that street and really bring up those issues so that when he's there doing that report, that gets considered, because the tendency for an appraiser to change his price after he's put it down on paper is quite unlikely, because they don't want to admit they were wrong.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
right.
And the idea that if we're able to get in there and kind of share our concerns about the project ahead of time, versus the borrower is going in and talking to the appraiser and talking up all the highlights of the project, I could easily see where there would be a 15 or 20% variance between those two numbers potentially, based on the attitude that that appraiser goes into the project with before he ever sees the project on site. So, I just thought that was an interesting observation, and I think it's very key that.
I just saw a deal that went through that there was a $2.8 million appraisal on a house in the Bay Area, and there was a $2.1 million appraisal. So how the heck do you get a $700,000 variance on a single-family house? And I felt it was probably a little bit higher than 2.1, but certainly the 2.1 was the 30-day sale price, not the 2.8. So
yeah, I mentioned at the Platinum event too that I had been involved with one where I was helping after they had done the deal and the project started going sideways and the values weren't there. They had gotten an offer in, a really lowball offer, and they called me up. It was some of the Platinum members, and it ended up that appraisal that came in on that single-family home was appraised at it looks like it's probably going to go to court now, but it was appraised at 30%, over 30% higher than what the sale price came in at, and there were other opinions that came in later that just showed that valuation that was put on there was just so extremely high compared to what the market would bring, and it made for 2 years of headache and hassle, and the investors that are working with that Platinum member or apprentice at the time, that everybody is just so tired of the project, and people have lost money, and it's just not worth getting into those types of things. So again, it's really easy to get into projects. It's hard to get out of them if the numbers aren't accurate. You have a real challenge. So. Anybody else want to share anything on that one? All right, then we'll go to the next, vetting the borrower, and this would be the exit strategy. Obviously, we want to make sure that there's a very solid plan that we generally, I see that there are two exits almost always, and one is the fix and flip, and the other is to hold. I guess there aren't a lot of others. There may be some other strategies other than those, but the key is to take them down each path to find out what is the likelihood that it will sell, and if it's going to be held, what is a process that's going to be followed to make sure that that property can be held and refinanced, and that there's somebody there that's going to qualify. That we show the pre-approval agreement. What are the backup plans? Maybe it's a co-signer. You know. So, any comments, anyone on this item?
Yeah, I think more people seem to get into trouble because they have kind of one idea, one exit strategy, or they're just very up in the air. We always try to pre-qualify. We're very strong on that. That is this are you buying this at the right price, intending it for it to be a flip with significant profit to make it worth doing that? But we always like to look for a backup strategy. So if it is a hold, or if they're going to they want to do they want to get cash out refi. Again, we've got to make sure that all the steps are put in place. We've vetted that whole process so that we know if we have to go from plan A to plan B, that we've got a viable option and we can make that happen pretty quick. So cosigner, I think, is important. If the borrower is in a situation where they may not be able to get conventional financing to do a cash out refi. So I think that's a really, and that goes back to, again, where we're vetting the borrower in the first place.
Right. And as much as we vet borrowers and vet projects, it seems there's always going to be a certain percentage or some that are not going to make it without some scrapes and bruises. So one of the things that we always do is our team is we always make sure that we look at the project as though we are going to take over that project if it doesn't perform. We have to, and I think that anybody out there that's lending, I think it's important not only to make sure that your borrower has a really solid exit strategy, because what happens if that borrower, I had one, I mentioned one at the Platinum event last week about the borrower that was going through the divorce, and he lost all interest in life. He lost all interest in doing anything. And what do you do with that? You can vet them all day long, and you can vet the project all day long. But if that happens, do we have the capacity to take over that project? So I think we even need to go past just the borrower and the project. What is our strategy as lenders? Are we going to be able to carry that ball and finish, get it across the finish line? So, let's see. Then we go to. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I was going to say, it's just kind of another take on this, is that some borrowers will come in and say, I've already got a buyer. I only need 3 months. I'm going to just put carpet and paint in this, and it's going to be sold in easily 2 months, no problem. I already have a buyer. Mm-hmm. I would never really believe that would really work. I wouldn't base a loan on that. You have to base the loan on selling it on a retail basis, I think, because those borrowers they have in their pocket don't always come through. Yeah. So that's just something to.
Yeah, the one thing that could possibly be done if we're really going to hang our hat on a pre-approval or and this is our next topic, our next item, which is a pre-approval agreement. I always look at it as pre-qualified or pre-approval. I mean, that's two different steps. But then taking the pre-approval to the point where if there's a substantial non-refundable deposit by the new buyer, that's one way to reduce the risk. So there are ways to reduce it, but like you said, Jennifer, there's always that risk that something may not happen as planned. So anybody want to just discuss a little bit about the difference between pre-qualified and pre-approval? Okay, so basically the way I look at it is that the pre-qualified just means that they've gone into the bank and subject to the information that that lender has looked at without any verification whatsoever, they are saying that, yeah, based on what you're sending us, it looks like you would qualify for a project, for a loan. The pre-approval means that they will give you a very specific set of items that has to be met, and sort of performance items, things that you have to either be able to show and verify and prove, or complete, and that would be the pre-approval stage. Both of those, I mean, obviously the pre-approval I think is quite a bit better than the pre-qualified, but it still is, like Jennifer mentioned, it still is not by any means a slam dunk. The way to make it really more solid, in my opinion, is to make sure that there's a reasonably solid, substantial deposit, and making it non-refundable is the ideal situation if you're going to rely on that as sort of the primary exit strategy. Next one is cosigner. This one I think is a good one. I like it. I think if you can get a cosigner and get a personal guarantee from that cosigner, that to me is probably one of the better ways to go. What's happening a lot of times is a cosigner is getting on and agreeing to cosign and agreeing to a personal guarantee because they are being leveraged, their relationship is being leveraged by the borrower. So that borrower has that relationship with that party, and that party believes, at least generally speaking in theory, that party believes that that borrower will perform, will get the project done. And so he's putting his name on the line, his reputation, his finances on the line, and it's great to have a cosigner available. But there again, we want to make sure not only that we have a verbal stating that there's a cosigner, but somehow tying it into the performance of the final exit strategy, whatever that might be. So cosigners, I like them because this business is, especially with the way we structure deals, it's really about leveraging other people's strengths, and that's a good way for a borrower to get another solid exit strategy is with a good, strong cosigner because of the relationship. So, any thoughts on that one, anyone?
Another thing I wrote on here, the days on market, and making sure that you get that house sold before the term of the loan is over with. I think it was something that actually came up at Platinum, where there was discussions about time frames and projects running over, and how that affects your money partners.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we're talking about exit strategies, as lenders, we want to try to put a loan together as short term as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these loans get done at 6 months, and maybe between 6 and 9 months. And after that, we may have penalty clauses.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't look at a project, price it with a 30-day close, and really look at what the days on market are in that exit strategy, and leave enough buffer, it's quite possible that loan is going to go over. And
Right.
It could have been just a planning thing in the front end where it needed maybe the deal shouldn't have got done at all.
Mm-hmm.
Should have had a lower 30-day price, or you should have given them longer term on the loan. So
Right. Yeah.
we're trying to always squeeze the loan down, and we're actually putting it into jeopardy going over. So
Exactly. Yeah. The biggest enemy of the SAM is time. I mean, one of the biggest enemies. The time can really eat up the back end of a SAM. That didn't sound very good, but it can really eat up the profits. And so one of the things that we try to do is always make sure that we present our investors with a yield, so that the yield will remain the same even if the project goes longer. So our goal is to take that buffer, put a buffer in there so that it doesn't affect the investors so much. But if you're relying solely on a SAM, it's interesting to see how the numbers really change over a very short period of time. And like you mentioned, Bo, I think we talked about this once before, and that is that the fact that the borrower knows that they have 6 months of interest in reserve the urgency isn't quite as much as if every month, at the end of every month, they have to make a monthly payment. Now, the obvious reasons we make sure there's interest reserves, but on the other hand, if they had that alligator on their tail every month, I think the urgency would be a little higher. So the key, I think, is to really, for the borrower, make it as accurate as you think you can for the timeline, and then put penalties after that, and just really making sure that that pressure is kept on, but also keeping the interest reserves ahead of time, so that there is no chance that they won't be able to make the payments. So it's a balance, but it's something that I think is pretty important to watch out for.
Last thing about the exit strategy also is that when you do sense a deal is going long, I mean, it's something you should be watching all the time, but if the deal is going long, what is the market doing in that area as well? Is the market supporting the length? I mean, we're looking at, we vet it in the very beginning, but markets change. Markets change for the positive and for the negative. So it could have a positive. I mean, there could be you could be okay even though your numbers, you didn't run your numbers the same way, even with a quick sale. After the deal goes a bit longer by the fact that the market has risen. At the same time, if the market is going down and your deal is going long, you need to be cognizant of that as well.
And I think that brings up a good point, and that is that as we're going, if we ever have a project that does run long or does run over budget and it needs more capital put in, if we're bringing any of our investors in, it's one thing if we're putting our own money into it, but if we're bringing investors in, we make sure that the project is completely revetted and that the numbers are solid. So to your point, Barry, it's critical that we make sure that that buffer rides with it. So let's say the market does tend to flatten out or maybe even go down a little bit, and the budget went up. What are we going to do? We have to know that we have the ability to either bring in some collateral partner with that borrower, or bring in a cosigner, credit partner, somebody who's got something to lose, that puts more strength into that deal, because the timeline has gone out further, but the value may not have gone up. What is it that we're going to do to make sure that from that point on, the deal is still solid? So there are some ways to deal with that and to control it, but just rather than just keep pumping money into it and letting the money get way up over the 65% loan to value or completed value or 70%, whatever that number is, revetting it at the time that additional capital is put in is pretty important.
Before you go on to the next slide, just in case Matt has to take off, he had a question. It's a little bit off topic, but he asked, have you guys had a chance to finish the private lending flow chart and docs? Anybody want to handle that one for him? And then we'll move on.
Well, I would start by saying that we're never going to have a final one, because it's always being adjusted and improved. But we are, man, there's been a lot of work and effort going into it by our entire team, and I really appreciate what you guys are all doing on it. But yes, we're getting, I feel like we're at about 80-85%. I don't know what you guys think, Bo and Andy, but it certainly is. It's looking pretty good and strong, and Barry and Jennifer, everybody that's working on it. So I would say we're probably at about that point.
We had one more.
I'm working on one of the documents right now.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to read a comment by Jay here. He said it's a good idea to watch sales in the area. Often our projects are selling 4 to 5 months after the original assumptions are made. Things change. Good to guide borrowers not to hold out for false hopes if new sales are lower. Good point, Jay. Thanks. Sorry, Mandy, did I interrupt you? Didn't mean to.
No.
Okay. Any other comments on that one? All right. The next one is general contractor. It's a general contractor under contract, and what does that look like? We've had in the past where we've had contractors that are licensed under, or they are working under another contractor's license. it depends on where you're at, what municipality, what county, what state. The rules can vary a lot. Some are very strict, some are not so strict. Do you anyone have comments on how to verify the licensing or the permitting?
Well, you can't really rely on a pocket license or a piece of paper because it could be expired. You really need to get the information direct from the contractor state license board.
Mm-hmm.
So usually you can get that online, and it'll tell you whether it's active or not.
Yeah, and I would add to that when a contract itself is being signed, and if it's not the contractor who has his license on the line, is the party that is signing that contract, the contract for work, is that party authorized signatory for that contract? So it's a small detail, but it could be an important detail if things ever went to court. Could that contract potentially be contested if it isn't signed by the properly authorized person? I'm sure it could be, and so just those little details and by having this sort of a checklist that we're going through, it just causes us to think through and make sure that we're double checking each one of those items. Owner builder. This one of my biggest concerns, if it's an owner builder, is, are they getting in over their head? Are they used to doing this type of a project? So what we do when it is an owner builder, we just look at it with a little bit different, at least I do, with a little bit different viewpoint of making sure that we know that borrower contractor has the capacity to do the job. We were just on a call recently with a borrower that said he did 4 projects in the last 6 months. Well, one of the things we're going to do is make sure that we get the HUD 1 to verify that person did in fact get those 4 projects done, and he stated that they all went well and were profitable. Well, that way we trust but verify, I guess is what they say. And so again, just making sure that we're covering all the bases. I would add to this too just the performance clauses, and this may come up in a different section too, but it's a contract between the borrower and the contractor that really keeps that contractor in control of the project, or tied to the project. So might be more the right way to say it. And how do we as lenders really get to that point where we have something to say about that general contractor if it's not one and the same? Well, what we do, we have a contract that we require the borrower to have signed with that contractor, or they need to have a certain set of clauses in the contract that they have with the borrower, which then helps tie us into the project through that borrower and making sure that we do have the necessary access to that property and the necessary controls of that property to keep it moving if things start slowing, or if the borrower has a challenge controlling that contractor. We want to be able to get in there and help and keep that project moving and keep the contractor under control. So having those clauses in can be really helpful. Some of those clauses we have learned the hard way, but that's how this whole checklist got built. It's about the school of hard knocks you go through. You just make sure that if it happens once, you have it on the checklist so that the next time it doesn't happen. And that's how a lot of these items came about on the checklist. Any comments on that? The last comment that I have on it, and that is general contractor, job superintendent, job supervisor. Bo and Mandy and I had a meeting on Sunday with a contractor that husband and wife contractor team, and they were bringing on a job supervisor, and they had in the budget, I think, what was it, Mandy, $6,000, $5,000, or $6,000?
Mandy's gonna have to turn. I just muted her, and I just realized I can't unmute her.
Uh-oh.
There's a ticking in the background. I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from.
So anyway, it was $5,000 or $6,000, which my initial thoughts were, how can you do a job superintendent on a project for $5,000 or $6,000? But then I thought back, and I had back in Minnesota when I was doing a lot of new construction, home building, and commercial buildings and developing. I had a general contract, a job superintendent, and he had done a lot of bigger commercial projects, and he was retired. He had nothing else to do, so he had a choice of sitting at home and reading the newspaper all day long, or being able to go out on the site and do what he really liked to do. So I know with his name was Jerry. I know with him, he loved the job, and it ended up being very inexpensive for him to do it. So if you truly do have a good qualified retired contractor, it can be very, very reasonable. And with somebody that has that many years of experience, you really get a lot of extra value out of them, because they've been through all of the tricks that general contractors or that subcontractors will play on a project, and so and the scheduling and all of that. So sometimes a retired contractor can be a really good option, and if you've got a reasonably good size, even if it's reasonably good size single family home, it may be well worthwhile to hire somebody at $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 and have them check out the site once a day or once every couple of days, just to be around the project. So it can be.
Hey Tom, got a couple of questions here. Matt wanted to know, if you could give some examples of the clauses in the contract that you would recommend, maybe just a few of them.
Sure. I'll share a couple, and if you guys think of any, just chime in. The one that I think of is the ability for us to, us meaning the borrower and us, to take over the contract, take over the project, if there is more than, I think we've been using either 14 or 21 business days of I think it was 14 business days of no activity. So if the job site sits there for more than a certain amount of days, through the borrower, we have the ability to get in there and take control of the project and finish it up. Anybody have any others that are things that they think of?
I think that's the most important one, though. It's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to come to it later, but regarding insurance, and that's having the lender connected all the way through to the project and through the insurance policies. So I guess the concern is when you've got an owner-builder, generally when you've got your contractor, they're going to have their general liability insurance, their builder's risk, and workers' comp and whatever. So when you get into somebody who is a true owner-builder, you've got potential exposure because they're not going to be carrying a workers' comp policy. So you're then looking at all the subcontractors and making sure that they have all the right insurance coverages. And again, the owner-builder, is this somebody who works a full-time job? They think they can do this part-time. It would be probably very prudent to have a supervisory fee in the cost of the project, so that you could bring somebody, if it were, like Tom said, a retired contractor to come in and take over that project if that owner-builder just wasn't competent enough to, most of them think they can do it, but I've seen it way too many times, and they just get in way over their heads. On the schedule. There's so much involved with scheduling and then just controlling the funds. So I tend to want to steer away personally from owner-builder.
Yeah. I think back on the two main contractors that I had back in in Minnesota. I keep going back to Minnesota, but and it was amazing over time where I was able to, I did my cross-country bike trip, and I did that over 3 months period. And I was gone. I had really virtually no access. I called in once a week back to the office, but the projects kept going and everything kept running because I knew I had the experienced contractors, and the general contractor, the builder, they had the control of their subcontractors, and if you have that kind of control, it just makes things so much easier. But if you get to the other side of the fence, where you have borrowers or contractors that are not qualified, that are going to cut corners, it's such a time trap. Not even to mention the money that can be wasted and lost. It's a major time trap. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
Tom, do you have actual documentation that you actually took that much time off and only checked in once a week? Can I see some documentation on that?
That was me in my previous life. Yes. I can show you pictures of every single summit that I went over with my bike.
Okay.
So, one thing I do, I think I had 17 or 18 pictures of the high points of the peaks in the mountains. I'll get them.
Do you have time for another question before we go on?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Alfred is saying, is asking, I should say, wouldn't a fixed fee at the end rather than a SAM be a better protection? Thus, if the project goes longer and as a result the valuation drops in the market a little bit, you would still get your fixed fee, and the lost profit would be on, I think it continues on the borrower's side. This would also be something that you could impress upon the borrower at the beginning to emphasize the importance of this estimation of the term of his rehab and market time. Not that we want our borrowers to profit well. I know the answer to that one, what we do, but go right ahead.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea. We have started going, in some cases, to a percentage of the gross sale price on the back end. Again, like you said, Alfred, because it really helps take away it takes away potential issues with how numbers are calculated. If you can just have it off of the base, the gross sale price, it really makes it a lot more simple. Now, different states have different rules. Can you call it a management fee? Can you call it a shared equity? Can you call it shared profit? What is it that it can be called? Does it pass any usury issues in the state? Those are all things that need to be looked at, but generally speaking, I agree, and I do like that idea. And what's interesting is what I've found talking with borrowers, that some borrowers are almost, it's interesting to see how much different they look at a 50-50 SAM or a 40-60 or whatever that is, versus a percentage of the gross sale price. Now that number could be projected at exactly the same number on both sides, but there are a lot more, some borrowers are a lot more likely or a lot more comfortable just giving a part of the gross sale price because it doesn't feel like they're giving away half the profit. So, yeah.
I was just going to say the other thing that, I didn't mean to interrupt you, didn't realize, it's a little delay here. The other thing that we do also, which is similar, is to have a minimum as well, and you've spoken about that a number of times already on
Right. Yeah, and there's some buzz about that a minimum SAM isn't legal. I think I don't know whether exactly the legalities of it, but the advice that we've been given is that as long as it's a minimum preferred, but certainly not a minimum guaranteed. So, because if it's a minimum guaranteed, then it could potentially be something other than profit. So I think where the real divider, I'm not an attorney, I don't think any of us on this call are an attorney, and so definitely have it checked out yourself, but I think the barrier or the sort of the demarcation is, are we asking for more than the profit in the project or more than what's reasonable within the project? And so by saying a minimum preferred SAM or a minimum preferred share of the profits, that we've been told is much more amicable than it is to have a minimum guaranteed profit. So I think that if anybody has, I'd love to hear comments from out in the public, out in the audience. Anybody that has comments or opinions on that, we would love to hear from you. So as Barry mentioned, the more we can have for interaction, the better on these calls.
And Homa said, great tips, Tom. Thanks.
Oh,
thank you,
well,
Homa.
Yeah, thanks to everybody out here. Thank you. All right. Are we done on that slide? Anybody else have anything else to share on that one?
Nope.
All right. So let's do one more here. Looks like we're getting moving right along. We have, again, vetting the project. We have estimated budget. Experienced contractors' bids and experienced contractors' estimates. That's interesting. Bo, you have made the comments on this one. Do you want to share?
Yeah, that whole thing kind of goes together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what you're trying to do is figure out where the bids are coming from. Is it an experienced contractor bid? Is the contractor just using creating an estimate based on his experience? Is it the borrower's past experience with no reliance on a contractor, or maybe he is the contractor?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the borrower's best guess, which I see a lot of that based on something somebody told me, and we could go so far as to they want to do the deal so bad they made the budget work in the numbers to be able to get the deal done, and then they're going to worry about it on the backside or something.
Exactly.
Crazy like that. So
very true.
The point, I was going to make earlier about a contractor, and I mean you can pretty much tell if you just focus on that budget and literally just ask them straight up, where did you get these numbers, and take some time and go through them and get them to answer, and you can get a good idea of, just ask them very pointed questions. Did you get a bid? Did you estimate?
Right.
And you'll figure out pretty quickly, are they getting it from experience? Are they guessing? And you have to know, because that budget's going to get you in a lot of trouble on the other end if it comes up short. So.
And that's why it's so critical to have a very detailed line item budget and a detailed scope of work. Now, Mandy, you're just finishing up what I think is going to be a really cool scope of work sheet that matches the budget itself. And the budget is very detailed. And by forcing, and I've seen this a lot of times where we will require that borrower go through that line item budget, and it forces them to think at a lot deeper level than they probably would have in the beginning. So that's one of two things. It either means that you've got an inexperienced borrower that you got to be really careful of and vet even more, or decide that you don't want to work with them because you didn't take the time to think it through, or you at a minimum get a lot better detail and a lot more accurate information to pull from to get the project done. I would also be careful when you're accepting bids or estimates. Some people will say a bid is a firm number, and an estimate is an estimate, meaning that number can shift. So what does your contract say, or what does the borrower's contract say with the contractor? Is it a bid? Is it an estimate? Is it a binding contract? Like you said, Bo, there are a lot of contractors they'll bid low, get their foot in the door, they'll get halfway done with the project, and then they'll turn into be just nasty trouble. And it takes up all of your time trying to make sure that you're keeping that project on task. They're running short of money. They expected they would just be able to get more money, because for you to hire somebody else to go in there and take their place, it's going to cost a lot more money than it would have had it just been bid out right the first time. So there are tricks in the different trades where I've seen it over the years where they will try to do that. They'll try and they'll be the lowest bid, but you got to be careful. Know what you're getting if you are taking the lowest bid, and that's why really making sure that we're going with the past experience, which is actually the next one, verification of the past experience. So
Their lackadaisy, how do you say that word? Lackadaisical approach is probably, you could just almost use that as a gauge on how your project's going to go, on how well they prepared their cost estimates.
Exactly.
So use that as a gauge to figure out how your deal's going to go. So.
Yeah, make note of it, and we just have to be careful that we don't get too excited about a possible project that we get to share in the back end profits on as lenders, because those profits aren't earned until that project is done and successful. And to get into a project that had flags ahead of time, it's just take the time to really look at it from a neutral perspective, not rose-colored glasses, so to speak. I mentioned a little bit earlier about we're coming right on top of the hour here, so we'll finish this one up. But getting the HUD one to show the borrower's past experience. And Bo, you and I were talking about this recently about ask them whether it's profitable. Get the numbers from them up front, and then later in the conversation or a couple days later, get them to send the verification. That is a really good way to find out if they are what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Honest.
Yeah, honest, and yeah, if they have integrity, if what they say matches what they can show as proof. Okay, so I think we covered most everything on this page. Barry, do we have any questions in the queue?
You're on mute, Barry.
I know. I did it. My phone was ringing. Sorry about that. Maria wanted to know. Thanks. If Tom, if you ever exercised an exit fee.
Yes, we have called them exit fees. Yes. The times where we call them exit fees, and this is just something that we've done. We've chosen to do it. If we're getting paid off on a note, and then it's being rewritten into a new note as another part of the project, we sometimes will charge that exit fee.
Yeah.
But really, I think it's really exit fee, preferred profit portion of the net profit. You know, it all gets sort of to the same end game.
Yeah. Anyway, Dilly, thanks a lot for your compliments as well, and we're getting all kinds of thank yous here, Tom.
Oh,
so
cool.
Kudos to you.
You guys too.
And thanks to everybody else.
Good. So anybody else want to share anything on that page? Otherwise, I think we're at the top of the hour here. We'd like to keep them at just 1 hour if possible.
Am I on mute?
No.
Nope.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment. You know, getting the cost breakdown or the full detail cost breakdown and having a document that aligns with that line by line that forces them to, which is what we're developing right now, is a PDF where they just tab over and they're forced to fill everything out down to the specific details of, okay, we're going to put windows in. Are they wood windows, vinyl windows, metal frames? The more detail you can get from the borrower and then match that line item amount that they put in there is going to give you a much better indication of whether they're being accurate with their bids. Also, what we do is we usually go to the key or the major trades, so foundation, framing, roofing, stucco, several items like that. We want to see a list of their subcontractors and also a copy of those bids, if not all the line items. But the ones that are the big dollar items that are really going to impact the project. So the more information that we can get up front on that and determine that it's accurate, I think, lends for the project not to run over budget.
Yeah, I know that you, Mandy, you and Bo, when you've said this before, you said it at Sunday's meeting again about the importance of taking the time up front. Maybe do you just want to share just a minute on that, the importance of the front rather than the back end?
Right. Just really trying to get the borrower and or the contractor to produce as much detail and be so specific on all the line items. So that's why we're creating the documentation to give to them, because what we found in the past is if you leave it to them, they're going to give you bits and pieces. Oh, we're putting windows in, and we're going to put a roof on. Well, what does that mean? It could be a $10,000 item to $50,000 for a roof, depending on what they're going to put on. The more detail and specific we can get, down to trim, where, what type of baseboard are you putting in? Where is it going in? Crown molding. Are you doing wainscoting on the walls? Are you doing wood beams, paneling? It all helps not only paint the picture of the quality of the project and then the potential value on the back end, but we're not guessing anything, up front. So those budget items, the amounts that they have in, the goal is that everything that's in there is going to be covered with the amount that's been allotted. And obviously we also mandate that there has to be a decent amount of contingency in there that could be pulled for any upcharges or things that they've forgotten when they were bidding it. So.
Right, and I think the point that I think is important, and you made this on Sunday, Mandy and Bo, and that is, it might take 2 or 3 times as much work in the first 2 weeks of the vetting and making sure the numbers are right and accurate. You're much better off spending 2 or 3 times more time and effort up front during that 2 or 3 week period versus the next 6 months or 9 months or 12 months, every day dealing with issues, dealing with problems that should have and could have been solved before the money was even ever loaned out. And so it's so disproportionate how much time it takes on the back end if this work is not taken care of up front. And it's so easy to just go in and fund the deal and we'll worry about those details later.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you that it's the worst thing you can do for any sort of efficiency and management and headache. So.
Yeah, we're actually doing them a favor by forcing that planning to be done up front, so that the project almost builds itself because it was well planned on the front end. So, and then we always use the analogy: let's get all the work done ahead of time so it can build itself, because we want to go look for the next project.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So,
exactly.
And that's the only way you can keep your sanity.
Right.
I was talking with a new lender this week, and they were talking about, oh, this is a friend of mine, and they've been doing this a long time, and I totally trust what they're doing. And I was like, well, are they making a lot of money? Are their deals having a lot of profit? Well, I'm not really sure. It's like, well, they might be making do, they might be barely getting through, but just because they're your friend doesn't mean they know what they're doing. So.
Right, exactly. Nope, very good point. Good, great. Well, thank you, everybody. I think we are at 5:06 right now, so here on the West Coast, that is. Do we have any other questions, Barry, that we want to try and catch?
You know what? I can take this one offline from Mike, because we're going to go long. But Mike, you can email me, Barry at gcafinancial.com, or any of us for that matter. But I'll be more than happy to answer your question about the HUD-1. All right, Mike, thanks.
And if anybody has questions about the A-Team meeting on Saturday, or the Bay Area Private Money for Real Estate Investors Meetup group on Tuesday, please let us know. We'd be happy to share any details on that. So
Maria wants to know if we have archives.
Yes.
Good point.
So.
Good point.
Okay.
Yes, so I'll answer that. Yes, we do. We do have archives. We do have them on GCAReachout.com. And Jennifer can get any and all details on that. But yes, we do archive all of these calls, the good ones and the bad ones and everything.
And the password for that is reachout 2000 and 14. So if you get to gcareachout.com, that's what you have to do to get onto it, because it is a community-only site.
And one more time, the password?
Is Reach Out 2014. Sorry.
Great.
I was trying to read it, so I did it right, and then I messed it up.
All right.
Can I just mention my call real quick?
Sure.
We're having a level 1 jumpstart call in about 30 minutes, well, actually more like 20 minutes. It's for level 1, and it's just a phone-in only call, and hopefully we have a lot of questions, a lot of interaction. But we're going to be talking about how to talk to borrowers, and how to mention the SAM, and how to bring up, how to control the conversation is where we're going to go with this one. But the call is, you ready? 712-432-3022, and you dial 740-689 and # to get on. So we probably need to get a slide so we don't have to do this every time, just call it out. So, but you can get onto the GCA Reach Out website also, and that number is on the website too.
Great. Well, with that, I think we're going to sign off. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and until next week, happy lending.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.